Okay, so a couple of just housekeeping notes. It is tradition to take your shoes off. It is okay if you feel like leaving them on. If you want to take them off, we kind of have a shoe corner over there where or you could put them under your chair. It's also tradition to sit on the floor. You are welcome to stay seated in the chairs, but there are some cushions down here for anyone who chooses to be seated on the floor. If you have not received one, there are some handouts outside. I think I underestimated. So if you did not get one, we will make sure that if you want one, there will be some more around later, okay? We want to say thank you first and foremost to our own Bhumika Bhatia for all her hard work. Woo! And so Bhumika came to me towards the beginning of the semester and was really excited about sharing her culture and her faith with our community, and wanting to know how she could do that. She brought members of her community in to speak with Dr. Crowder and I, and she has just been so welcoming since she's been here, and she has worked so hard on this. In addition to that, we want to thank Alamayu Feet and Ara Simpson, who are the community life assistants, for all their hard work, Joey Rodale, Kim Dietrich, Isabel, and her son Neil, who have all been up here working really hard while you guys were finishing that class, and they've all been up here setting up. And so, outside the door, you saw the sand out there, and so you are invited to make your own design, Rangoli design. And so you can see the beautiful design that Bhumika has done here, and also outside between the chapel and the dining hall. And so you can make your own. You can write something in the sand, whatever you would like to do, but we invite you to do that. We also, as we go through, there will be words that will be in the Indian language, in Bhumika's language, but also in your handout there is translation, so you can understand. And so one of the other things that she has shared with me, so we all received the dots on our forehead, that I thought was so interesting, is she said that this is the center of concentration. And so when you meditate, you focus on that point. And so just a little tidbit, and that I will probably take with me as I go forward. And so I want to introduce, we have members of the ISKCON community who are here today. Our primary speaker is parking his car, and he will be up very soon. But we have Shivran and Sweta and their son Krishna, who will be leading us today. Our keynote speaker is Nityananda Pran Das, who is a practicing bhakti yogi and Vedic scholar. For the past 10 years, he has influenced the lives of many, especially the youth in the Chicagoland area. He is regularly invited by educational institutions like IIT Chicago, Northwestern University, UIC, and Purdue University to speak on topics based upon the Vedic worldview. Prior to taking on the Vedic lifestyle in the path of self-realization, he spent over 16 years in the field of marketing and market research, working for Nielsen, one of the top marketing research firms in the world. His speaking themes range from the nature and dynamics of relationships to developing a thoughtful approach to educating on the environment and living in harmony with nature. Nityananda Prandas is currently serving as the temple president of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, Chicago. So I want to welcome all of our guests, and I am going to turn things over to Bhumika, who will lead us from here on.
Happy Diwali. Thank you for coming here. We'll start with the Aarti in your handouts. If you see Ganesh Aarti, that's the first one. We'll have lyrics on the screen. And we have some musical instruments right behind you. So we have some musical instruments. You're welcome to use any of these. Make whatever music you want to with the music going on. And enjoy. Thank you. And then I will. Okay. Yes, Prabhuji. So we have Nityananda Prandas Prabhu here. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for coming. Sorry, Prabhuji, what is your name? Ajita Das. We also have Ajita Das Prabhu with us here. Thank you for coming, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
जय गणेश देवा माता जाकी पार्वती पिता महादेवा जय गणेश देवा माता जाकी पार्वती पिता महादेवा एक दंत दयावंत चार भुजाधार जय गणेश देवा माता जाकी पार्वती पिता महादेवा माता जाकी पार्वती पिता महादेवा माता जाकी पार्वती पिता महादेवा
Next one we're doing Lakshmi Aarti. The one we did was Ganesh Aarti. It was to begin any auspicious these were the two artis that we traditionally do during Diwali. Now I'm going to introduce you, which you've been introduced already, to Nityananda Pran Prabhu, who's here now, and I would like to invite him to the stage and talk to us about Diwali and Damodar month. Please, Nityananda Pran Prabhu.
At DeVry University's College of Business, we're looking for what the companies you'd want to work.
Prabhuji, oh, over there.
Hare Krishna and good evening. I am extremely honored to be in your presence, to be with you tonight while we celebrate Diwali. So I'm very grateful to Bhumika and Reverend Lisa Goods and all of you for taking the time to come here. I'm very honored to be part of this evening with you. Often when I have to talk about a festival like Diwali, or in general, I'm going to use the word Hindu for now, sort of perspective, I find that I feel like I have to give a little context to appreciating events such as this. And I'm assuming most or all of you are either faculty or students within the Chicago Theological Seminary. Am I accurate? Okay. And Chapel, okay. There is one side where we have rituals, and then there is the, I would say, the philosophical aspect that supports or gives life to and meaning to the rituals. So Bhumika has taken us through some of the rituals, and I thought I'll speak on this side, and that way we have a fuller picture. I hope that's okay with you. There are many occasions, many things that happened on the night of Diwali. Actually, the word in Sanskrit is Deepavali. Avali means a string, and Deepa means lamp. So Deepavali means a string of lamps, or a whole line of lamps. And we, like in any home, when we invite a guest, or if you ever bought a house or in the market for a house and there's a showing, the first thing the realtor will do is come and turn on all the lights. So the reception of someone very special is done by turning on all the lights. Except there are some restaurants where the dimmer the light, the tastier the food, apparently. And I was told that the reason the food is tastier because one is you don't know what you're eating. So the reason for Deepavali is the returning of Lord Ram. Right? You've heard these names, I hope, from Ramayana. So please stop me and tell me I know what you're talking about. I'm assuming, so it's the returning of Lord Ram from Lanka back to his kingdom of Ayodhya. And all the residents of Ayodhya received him this way. So that's the side of what they did. And on the side of why they did, because the philosophical side giving meaning, is that the presence of God in one's life is akin to, enlightenment, that there is light. And the absence of God in one's life is akin to darkness. In In our sacred text, there is a saying, Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andhakara. Jaha Krishna Vaha Nahi Mayara Adhikara. That Krishna is like the sun. And this material world, which is illusory, which gives us the sense of absence of God, is like darkness. And one's life needs to be filled with light by having a relationship with God. And that relationship, which we call enlightenment, fills us with the light of knowledge. So, absence of the knowledge of God in one's life is compared to darkness. And in darkness, you're pretty much groping to find anything you can hold on to. There's a little tumble, you might trip over something. And you have to fend for yourself in one sense. But if you turn the light on, that's what the Vedas say, if the light is on, then you can see things as they are. And our teacher, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, who's the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, he mentions that knowledge, if you ask people, how would you define knowledge? I'm sure we get many definitions. A simple way that he helped us understand what knowledge is, he says knowledge means to know something as it is. So when we know, let's say this sheet of paper, I use this sheet of paper in knowledge if I know what its real purpose is. Of course, I can use this paper for many things. I can use it to hold some food in it. I can crumple it and throw it at someone as a ballistic. I can use it to wipe the floor. But the real purpose of this sheet of paper is to write something on it, something meaningful. So when I use it in its true purpose, I'm using it in knowledge. Therefore, there is a purpose behind this material creation. And to turn the light on or be enlightened is to know the purpose of this material world. And the Vedas describe that the purpose of this material world is twofold. One, to convince us that life without the presence of God in one's life is a life of suffering and difficulty and misery. So one may say, hey, that's not fair. Why should God be so unjust that if you don't choose Him, then there is misery? So it's described that this place is designed, according to Bhagavad Gita, this place is designed with two characteristics. This is called Dukhalayam. Alayam means a house or a place. Dukhalayam means a place of suffering. And Ashashwatam, that everything is temporary. So the first reason is to understand that absence of God, there is suffering. And the second, that happiness, as any person or any living being is searching for happiness, is either temporary or illusory. Temporary in the sense that once you get it, first of all, it's difficult to get it, but if you get it, it doesn't stay. It goes away. It has a characteristic of dwindling. For example, in economics, there is a standard phenomena called the law of diminishing marginal returns. That for every incremental input, you don't get the same output back. Common example is chewing gum. Yeah? when I first put it in my mouth, there's a burst of flavor. So the law of diminishing marginal returns would say that as I keep chewing, the incremental taste I get from it reduces. So after about half an hour and a jaw pain, I have to spit it out. If I were in a different environment, I'd say I'd have to stick it somewhere, but this is not the audience for it. You guys are not like that. Right? You have to spit it out and get the next one. Another characteristic is the more you do, the less, because you get from it, you have to change the activity. After some time, you will be bored of chewing gum. We want the next flavor, or the next brand, or whatever. So this is the characteristic of happiness in the material world. And the second purpose is that it's a place of reformation. That we come here, we understand this is not my place, I need to find my real home. And it said the real home is back with Krishna, back in the spiritual world. So the Bhagavad Gita describes that there is a spiritual world with spiritual existence and spiritual reality, and this material world is an exact replica of that spiritual world. In fact, it calls it a reflection. And this reflected sphere is where we are, doing pretty much the same things we would do in the spiritual world, just that we are operating in a reflected environment. In a reflected environment, we don't get the experience of full reality. Just as an apple reflected in a mirror looks like an apple, you can't taste it. Similarly, happiness in this world is a reflection of the original happiness, except you can't taste it here. And even if you try, it is fleeting. Another important thing that the Bhagavad Gita teaches is, in this material world, happiness is a promise of an experience in the future. And therefore, people are working, or whatever they're doing, is hoping that someday that future will come. And so the Vedas break that idea with a simple example, because they use common everyday life examples. So here we have a washing machine at home, but in the olden days, the washerman would come home and take your laundry and pile it on a donkey and take the donkey to the river. Now, after you pile a bunch of clothes on the donkey, it's difficult for him to move. So what the washerman would do is tie a stick with a carrot at the end of that stick. That's where the phrase carrot at the end of the stick comes from. So when the donkey looks at the carrot, his first thought is, I just need to step 2 steps forward and I get that carrot. And he walks forward. Naturally, the carrot moves, right? And that's how the donkey goes all the way to the lake. Then the washerman removes the stick, does his thing, puts the heavy load back on the donkey, puts the stick back on, and the donkey moves back. So the happiness in this material world is like that carrot at the end of the stick. I have to work towards it. When the Bhagavad Gita describes that on the spiritual plane, it's not a promise of the future, it's an experience now, right here. So then what are those activities that give us happiness now? What is this that give us a peek into the spiritual atmosphere? It is those activities that we would do, that is in relationship or in relation to Krishna. So singing or chanting God's holy names, worshipping God, engaging all our activities in the spirit of service to God, gives us the experience of happiness now. And that spirit is described, the condition for it is supposed to be unconditional love. So an aspiring spiritualist like us is to practice and cultivate through study, through service, through meditation, is to practice and cultivate that sense of unconditional, selfless love for God. And how do I know? How do I know that I'm developing love for God? Anything that I'm develop has to have some characteristics, some symptoms. If I'm developing a fever, I have to have some symptoms. Right? So there are some symptoms. And the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam describe that essentially you should have 3 categories of symptoms. It says, Bhakti, Para Isha Anubhava, Viraktir Anyatra Cha. It says one should develop some love for God. And that love is that when we love someone, they're always in our mind. We're always thinking about them. And we're always trying to do things remembering them. Our teacher Srila Prabhupada gives the example that let's say an empty nester, someone whose child has grown up and gone to college, when the mother looks at little tiny shoes that her baby boy or baby girl was wearing, now this guy or her, she's grown up and gone to college, but when she looks at the shoes, she immediately remembers her son or daughter. So anything we see should remind us of our beloved God. That's a symptom of developing love, the way that God is always in our mind, we're thinking about it. So that's bhakti. Second, it says para isha anubhava. You have an experience of God, either directly face to face at a very developed stage, or an experience of God's loving hand in all circumstances of life around us. Somehow we tend to grow into seeing that whatever circumstances happened, somehow there is the hand of God in it. Whether it is adversity or some windfall. If you look at the life of great saints across traditions, as soon as there's adversity, most people become cynical or angry or disappointed. But in the life of great saints, adversity actually brings forth their deepest qualities in them. And that's why they're great saints, because they see adversity as great opportunities of expressing their love for God. So that's para isha anubhava. And the third, it says, viraktir anyatra cha. Virakti means like a distaste or a disgust. Distaste or a disgust from any activity or anything that is not in relationship with God. Or distaste for anything materialistic, because that usually is counter to the development of one's deeper spiritual sentiments. And the example or analogy given is, just as a person who's very hungry, when they eat, 3 things happen. They feel satisfied, they feel nourished, and they don't want to keep eating more. So, a simple example, but this is the way we learn to practice and develop our spiritual activities. Now, the reason the Bhagavad Gita describes that there are spiritual activities is because we have a spiritual identity. If we notice, each one of us, we do certain activity depending on our sense of identity. When I think of myself, let's say as a student of CTS, then I will do those activities of a student at CTS. If I think of myself as faculty, then I have those activities of a faculty. If I think of myself as a father, I act as a father, I behave as a father. If I think of myself as a son, then I do things a son does. If I think of myself as an employee at a particular organization, I work or I act as that employee. So activity is guided by identity. In this material world, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that every conditioned living entity has an identity crisis. And the identity crisis is that every living entity, each one of us, is unaware of our actual spiritual identity. And based on our accepted designations or accepted masks that we put on, the identities, we act accordingly. But behind these layers of false identity is our true identity. And that true identity is that we are parts and parcels of God. We are spiritual entities, conscious spiritual entities. And so conscious spiritual entities have spiritual activities. That spiritual activity gets transformed in this material world as material or materialistic activities. So going back to the example of this being a reflected area, a reflected sphere, in the spiritual atmosphere or spiritual sphere, everything that is unconditional and selfless is reflected here as selfish. Therefore, we see that everyone is pretty much signed up for what I call the WIIFM program, right? And that is What's in It for Me program. It's the new FM radio, WIIFM. What's in it for me? So what's in it for me is counterproductive to love because it's not about me. So this material atmosphere is such. Instead of giving, we are taking. Instead of loving others, we're loving ourselves. Instead of selflessness, we are steeped in selfishness. And instead of our identity being that we are spiritual beings meant to serve God, in this reflected atmosphere, we believe that we are God and others are meant to serve me and my interests. So we are on the conditioned living entity, is described in the Bhagavad Gita, is in the, has signed up for the God project, trying to be the controller, trying to be the decider, trying to feel that what I'm somehow making things happen. I am causing things to happen. But actually we're not causing anything to happen. Perhaps causing headache for others. But that's the idea. I'm causing things. When I think that I'm causing things to happen, the laws of karma begin. So Bhagavad Gita is a call. There's a call to action. The call to action is that stop material activities and begin spiritual activities. So therefore there is a Vedic aphorism, asatoma sadgamaya. Are you familiar with that? Have you heard that? Asatoma sadgamaya. So asat means temporary. It says asatoma, do not pursue that which is temporary. Satgamaya, go after the eternal. Tamasima jyotirgamaya, don't go after the darkness, go after the light. Mrityorma amritam gamaya, don't go after that which will end in death, go to that which will end in immortality or begin with immortality. Because the soul is immortal, it's the body that dies. And this body takes on another dress, another body, etc. So that's the Bhagavad Gita. And so quickly, the idea of this Damodar Arati or the Damodar context is, how do we know or how do we begin, or how does anyone begin to get even attracted to spiritual activities? So I come from the background of marketing and advertising. And I know that one of the things they say that advertising works is when you can recall a particular brand or you can recall a particular product. And for any one of us to recall, that particular commercial needs to run multiple times, at least 7 times. And if you can't recall after that, then they say that the commercial's no good. So the idea of, remember, this is a reflected atmosphere, right? So in the spiritual sky, there must be real advertising. And we say avatar, right? The avatar of God. In Sanskrit, avatar literally means to descend to. So when God descends to this material atmosphere, we say it's an avatar. And he does his advertising jingle. It's the Hare Krishna mantra which we'll sing now. He does his advertising. He displays his activities for common people to see and common people to become attracted to. Common just doesn't mean uneducated. Common means any conditioned being who's not spiritually elevated. And that's his way of attracting by his heroic activities. In our life, we're all attracted to heroes. We want to hear about heroes. We cheer for heroes. We sing slogans for them. The original hero is Krishna or God. And he does heroic things. So, and the interesting thing is, he does heroic things in ways that will challenge rationality. In ways that would think, how is that possible? Is that really possible? Is that mythology? It's not mythology. Because one of the definitions of God is that he can do anything. In Sanskrit, it says, Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. There is no need for him to do anything. Why? The reason we do something is because we want something. We feel an inadequacy, and therefore we do something to fulfill that inadequacy. I'm hungry, I go and eat. I'm sleepy, I go and lie down. I want someone to hear me, so I'm talking. Or whatever. But for him, there is no inadequacy, so he doesn't have anything to do per se. And whatever he wants to do, all he has to do is just think about it and it will happen. If I were to just think about it, nothing happens. That's the distance. And natas samascha adhikasya drushyate. That there is no one equal to or greater than him. Of course, these are indications of what we say his almightiness or godhood. But the interesting thing is, beyond all of this, the Vedas describe, the Vedas is the body of knowledge, the Vedas describe that God is a person. And a person is one who naturally has a personality, and personality means relationships. And therefore we find Krishna as a baby, although he's not a baby, but he manifests as a baby to exchange parental affection. He manifests as a boy to experience fraternal affection. He manifests as a handsome young man to exchange conjugal affection. He appears as a master to experience servitude, affection, etc. So on the one hand is his godhood, and the other hand is his personality. And behind his godhood, he wants to demonstrate and give us a peek into his personality. So Srila Prabhupada gives an example. A man went to visit a king, and he wanted the king's audience. He was like, please, may I speak with the king? So the minister came out and said, please wait, the king is very busy right now. Okay. And he knew that this king was a very, very powerful person, had conquered kingdom so far and wide, as far as, up to the horizon. Very, very powerful. Had a high seat. Everyone bowed to this king. So he waited and waited, and the king didn't come. So finally he decided, let me see what he's up to. And he peeped through the keyhole. And he saw the king down on his fours with his grandson sitting on his back playing horsey. And the reason the king is playing horsey is because he has this loving, intimate relationship with his grandchild. For everyone else, he's this powerful king who sits on the high throne. And that grandchild, he doesn't care if his grandfather is the big king. He's on his knees. As far as I'm concerned, horsey. So that's the loving affection. That's the loving relationship. So Krishna, he wants to experience that as well from all of us, beyond the godhood, that we bow down and offer our prayers. He relishes being a friend. He relishes being a child. So that's this particular, what we say, pastime, where Krishna was a baby. And I'll leave you with one last thing. In this particular song, one of the things that happens is his mother ties him to a grinding mortar with a rope because he was running here and there. She's tying God down with a rope. Maybe if you have an opportunity some other time, we'll get into the philosophical idea. What does it mean to tie God down? Okay, tie the unlimited God down with a rope. This is something very interesting. But anyway, so she ties him and she says, now I know you won't move anywhere. I'm going to go take care of some things. And Krishna sees that there are two large trees. They're called the Arjuna trees. These are very special type of trees, where their roots begin 6 feet above ground and they go far that way. So these trees are so strong that they don't even budge a little in any hurricane. So when Krishna crawls on his fours and comes between the two trees, the grinding mortar gets stuck between the two trees. And so Krishna gives a little tug. And these two trees come crashing down. Actually, it said the two personalities, they were cursed in their previous birth to stand as trees. So I'm skipping all those details for you. It's a fascinating story, but I'm skipping those details. So when these two trees come down, everyone's shocked. So Krishna's parents come running. They see his little baby between the two trees. So naturally, any parent would be worried, and they carry their child. They ask them, what happened? What happened? Oh, Krishna tugged and broke those trees, or uprooted those trees. And like anyone would say, the parents said, come on. You must be kidding. How can a little baby do something like that? Anyway, my little kid, and they take him in. So our teachers ask a question. The teachers in our line of succession, they ask a question, which, like I said, remember, that Krishna defies rationality just to mess with us. So the question they ask is that any physicist would have a problem here. That how can a rope that has limited what they call tensile strength, that when you pull a rope, its tensile strength is the limit of force that it can take, beyond which it snaps. And there are two trees that roots starting 6 feet above ground that won't budge in a hurricane. Krishna is between these two trees with the rope round his waist, and he does a little tug, and the trees fall and the rope does not snap. Nice story, huh? But there's a reason behind it. And the reason is that ordinarily that rope has limited tensile strength. That is true. But the reason it has unlimited strength, if you will, is because it is connected to Krishna. So any one of us may have very limited strength, very limited knowledge, very limited anything in this world. Any asset that we think we have, it's limited. But when that asset is connected in God's service, it has the same strength and potency as God Himself. Oh, thank you. So the idea is that the rope, ordinary rope, was used for tying cows. Very ordinary, but very glorious by the time it is connected to God. So one may be very ordinary, but when one lives a life connected to God, one becomes very glorious as God. So that's the significance of this song at the end, where it says, I offer my respects unto that rope around your waist. Is because of the glory. And here's another to add to it. The rope was connected to Krishna by a devotee of Krishna, or by the servant of God. That means the messages that our teachers give us is that each one of us needs a teacher, needs a servant of God that can connect us to God back. Therefore, we offer and honor our teacher, offer respect and honor our teachers, because they are the medium that are going to connect us to God, which otherwise we may be as insignificant as a rope that has limited tensile strength. So when we sing this song this month, we honor our teachers, we honor those spiritual personalities who have given us insight and connection with God, and we honor the privilege of being an instrument of God. That rope, to be an instrument, is the greatest honor. And therefore, in the normal world, if someone is called a servant, it has a very diminutive connotation to it. But in our spiritual terms, if anyone is called you're a servant of God, it's a great honor. Therefore, our names end with Das. Das means servant. It's a reminder. I haven't gotten there. I have a long way to go. But it's a reminder that my life is meant for service to God. And everything that belongs to God, God's humanity, God's animals, God's birds, God's trees, God's land, earth, everything, because it is God's, it is divine. Therefore, that song honors everything that's divine when seen in relationship with God. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much. At this time, what we're going to do, we need to do a little transition. And so we are going to have just 2 or 3 minutes of questions. If anyone has any questions, while Jan and Alamayo transition, we are going to move the chair over so that they can put the altar, but the other table there. But if anyone has any questions, I have a mic here. The other thing that is going to happen, if anyone, first of all, we have food over here. Once we do the transition, what's going to happen there are tea lights that represented the diyas that are traditionally used. Everyone will get one of those. Water will be poured on your hands to cleanse your hands before you receive the light. And so you will receive those over there after we've done the question and answer. Also, you will also be free to take food. There is food over here. that it will be open for the rest of our time together. And before you leave, there are gift boxes over here with sweets in them for you to take with you. Okay? And so if anyone has any questions, and I'm going to ask Jan and Alamayu to come so we can do this transition. You all are never this quiet. They are never.
You said that if you don't have any question, one of two things is possible. One is that you 100% agree with whatever I said. And you know the other. There. I think that lady first. Did you have a question?
I thought you had a question.
Okay,
Had your hand up.
right in the front row here.
Okay.
I think they need a mic just because it's getting recorded, I think. No, I think it's getting recorded if I'm not wrong.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I was just wondering, what is the mixture that we put on our third eyes, and how is that related to Shiva? Or is it not?
Well, not necessarily. Generally, what we as Vaishnavas, followers of Vishnu, put is, it's called tilak. And the primary purpose of tilak is to remind us, just as any house of worship, any chapel or temple has a spire with a flag or something that distinguishes it from all the other buildings around, right? Similarly, our teacher told us this is a marking that identifies and for ourselves and others. And it's a confirmation for ourselves that this body is meant for the service of God. Therefore, we are very careful what we put in it and what comes out of it. That's the primary purpose of tilak. Now, traditionally or through history, there have been many adaptations to it. And so you see red, yellow, horizontal, some other, I would say, modifications. But the purpose of tilak is that one. It's a reminder. Or like we were entering, it's a reminder. Now I'm entering a place where my meditation on, my thought on, is on God.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I would like to ask about your WIIFM,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Sure.
So there's, for those of us in the room, that I know that there's at least a couple of us who've been trained as community organizers. There's a concept that we talk about that's very important in our work that we call self-interest. And it is directly related to WIIFM. And it basically says that neither selflessness nor selfishness are healthy states of being. Complete selfishness means it's all about me.
Right.
Complete selflessness means that I deny myself, that I deny who I am at the exclusion of everyone else. And so we talk about this concept of self-interest, where it's about my being in relationship to you. And so I'd just like you to talk just a little bit more about that, because as you talked about selflessness being the highest or one of the highest states of being, it's just counterintuitive to my training and perhaps to some of the training of some of the other folks here that where we're trying to be in relationship, and it seems to be a little different from what you're talking about.
Excellent point. Thank you. Actually, in the Vedic understanding, in a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is the idea of self-interest. So self-interest is in the side of unconditional. Unconditional doesn't mean I don't have any self-value or worth. It means that my attention is on the idea of giving. So there is a term called self-interest. And in Sanskrit, it's called swa-artha or swartha. Most commonly, swartha is understood as selfishness, but it is self-interest. And as you very rightly said, self-interest is about relationship. So the idea is that the actual relationship, the actual self-interest that one should be concerned about primarily, and everything else is in connection to that original self-interest, is my connection, my relationship with God. And in that, that's my true, genuine self-interest. Because right now, my self-interest may drive me to doing things and accepting other relationships without the central point of focus. With that central point of focus, all my activities, all my relationships, community work, whatever, we're all community builders, has meaning. So there is that concept of self-interest. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. You guys are a great audience. Thank you so much again. I'm very, very honored to be with you tonight.
So thank you. I request everyone to come over to this side of the table and receive the lamp. And we'll be singing the Damodar Arati now. So thank you. You can briefly just cleanse your hands, receive the lamp, and then walk up the stage. They're going to remove the chair of the speaker, and you can offer, wave it around the deities on the altar. Thank you. So once you have the lamp, please come over here carefully. There's steps here. And you can wave the lamp in front of the altar. And then you can put the lamps back on the table to my right. So thank you.
ईश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं लोले व्रजमानं नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् यशोधाभियोलुखलाधवमानं परं दृष्टमत्यन्ततो धृतगोप्या रुदन्तं मुहुर्नेत्रयुग्मं मृजन्तम् कराम्बोजयुग्मेन सातङ्कनेत्रम् मुहुश्वासकां पात्रीरेखकान्ता स्थितग्रैवं दामोदरं भक्तिभारम् इति दृक्ष्वलीलाभिरानन्दकुण्डे स्वघोषं निमाजन्तम् आख्यपयन्तम् इति स्वलीलाभिरानन्दकुण्डे स्वघोषं निमाजन्तं माख्यपयन्तम् तदीयेषिताग्नेषु भक्तजिता त्वं पुनः प्रेमतस्तं सतावृति वन्दे तदीयेषिताग्नेषु भक्तजिता त्वं पुनः प्रेमतस्तं सतावृति वन्दे वरं देवमोक्षं न मोक्षं वदिं वा न चान्यं वृणेऽहं वरे सदपीह वरं देवमोक्षं न मोक्षं वदिं वा न चान्यं वृणेऽहं वरे सदपीह इदं देव पूर्णाथ गोपालबालं सदा मे मनसि अविरस्तिं किमन्यै इदं देव पूर्णाथ गोपालबालं सदा मे मनसि अविरस्तिं किमन्यै इदं ते मुखाम्बोजम् अत्यन्तनीलैर्वृतं कुण्डलैस्निग्धरक्तैश्च गोप्याम् इदं ते मुखाम्बोजम् अत्यन्तनीलैर्वृतं कुण्डलैस्निग्धरक्तैश्च गोप्याम् मुहुश्चुम्बितां बिम्बरक्तधरां मे मनसे अविरस्तम् अलं लक्षलाभै मुहुश्चुम्बितां बिम्बरक्तधरां मे मनसे अविरस्तम् अलं लक्षलाभै नमो देव दामोदरानन्त विष्णु प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालब्धिमग्नम् नमो देव प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालब्धिमग्नम् कृपा दृष्टिवृष्याति दीनं बतानो गृहाणेश मामद्यमिति यक्षि दृश्या कृपा दृष्टिवृष्याति दीनं बतानो गृहाणेश मामद्यमिति यक्षि दृश्या कुबेरात्मजौ भद्रमूर्त्यैव यद्वा त्वया मोचितौ भक्तिभादौ कृतौ च कुबेरात्मजौ भद्रमूर्त्यैव यद्वा त्वया मोचितौ भक्तिभादौ कृतौ च तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकामे प्रयच्छ न मोक्षे ग्रहो मेऽस्ति दामोदरेह तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकामे प्रयच्छ न मोक्षे ग्रहो मेऽस्ति दामोदरेह नमस्ते स्तु धाम्ने स्फुरब्धिधाम्ने त्वदीयोधराय विश्वस्य धाम्ने नमस्ते स्तु धाम्ने स्फुरब्धिधाम्ने त्वदीयोधराय विश्वस्य धाम्ने नमो राधिकायै त्वदीयाय प्रियाय नमो नन्तलीलाय देव्याय तुभ्यं नमो राधिकायै त्वदीयाय प्रियाय नमो नन्तलीलाय देव्याय तुभ्यं देव्याय तुभ्यं नमो राधिकाय नमो ललितलीलाय देव्याय तुभ्यं हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा दामोदर दामोदर राधे जय राधा दामोदर दामोदर राधे
So 6:30. I don't know, will we have time? 6:30?